Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun with Benzion. Today we'll be discussing Yevamos daf pei hey. A lot of interesting halachas that come up on this daf. I'm going to give you a little summary of the halachas and explain that summary to make it more understandable to you. One of the halachas that's concluded on this daf is lo huzaruk sheres and asel psulin, meaning basically a bas kohen, she's let him marry a halal, even though she's going to become a halala through the bia, and her child will be a halala, which is a problem. But technically, the Torah allows her to do that. Even if she's ruining her children, she's ruining herself. The Torah says no problem doing that. She's allowed to do that. She's allowed to get married to him. So what would be the explanation of that? The explanation of that basically is that the Kedushas Kahuna, for example, the Kohen, who's a Kohen, a Vadai Kohen, he's not allowed to marry a Halala. That's explicitly in the Torah. Halala, Grusha, Halala, Bezona, Halala. He can't marry a Halala. That's an Isser D'Oraisa, a lav in the Torah. That for sure is not okay. They can't be married. And the Gemara, the Torah really explains V'kidashto, right? And Rashi says over there, you have to Makadesh the Kohen to remove him from a marriage that lacks his Kedusha. So we explained that the idea is that a Kohen has Kedushas Kohen. Only the men have Kedushas Kohen. Women, Bas Kohen, there's no Kedushas Kohenes. So when it comes to V'kidashto, this extra Kedusha, this extra sanctity, that we have to make sure the Kohen has the most enjoyable and beneficial marriage for him. So therefore you have to Makadesh him, make sure he enjoys the world the most. Don't marry a Grusha, don't marry a Zona, don't marry a Chalola. These are defective. Woman with a Pagam, woman with a defect, a mum, a blemish, spiritually, physically. Don't marry these women. We force them to get divorced. But a Bas Kohen, she has no Kedushas Kahuna. It's an Isser on the Kedusha. She has no Kedushas Kahuna. She's allowed to marry a Chalal, even though she's ruining herself, ruining her children. For her, it doesn't make a difference because there's no Kedushas Kahuna by the Kohen. Now, the Gemara then talks about, towards the bottom of Pei Hey and Aleph, we talk about, is there Mizonos, right? The Mishnah says, Almana Grusha V'chalusa L'Kohen Hedyot, when there's Isurim, Isurei Kahuna, Isurei Kedusha, by marrying someone you're not allowed to Midoraisa. The Mishnah says she gets a ksuba, and the Gemara on Pei Hey and Beis discusses why we're allow her to keep the ksuba. A ksuba would include the mano masayim that you sign under the chuppah, approximately $3,000, even maybe according to some Rishonim, including Nichses on Barzel. If she brought in some properties, she would get those properties back at their value, the value that she brought it in at. She would get these things, even though the marriage is an Isser D'Oraisa, and we try to get them divorced. She gets these things. The Gemara is very clear in Pei Hey and Aleph that she doesn't get Mizonos. Mizonos she doesn't get because we want to get divorced. The only case she gets Mizonos is where the husband died and there's no problem of being divorced. The husband's dead. You don't need to get divorced anymore. Mizonos, ksuva she gets to keep because you get the ksuva when you leave, so therefore there's no problem of dissolving the marriage. She'll get the ksuva. They didn't penalize her like the Gemara explains on Pei Hey and Beis for whatever reason, two reasons to go into that in a second. Mizonos though cause her to stay married, and we don't want that. She loses the Mizonos. Now, part of the idea of explaining the reason Mizonos that she doesn't get is because I'd like to say like this, that the way the Torah phrases the Isser of Almana L'Kohen Gadol and Grusha V'chalusa L'Kohen Hedyot is lo yikachu. Kicha or Havaya, these things are being married. We don't want them to be married. The Isser is not so much the Kedushin. The Isser is the Nisuin, to be married. It's a Pagam in his Kedushas Kohen to be married to a woman who has a defect like this, the Grusha Zano Chalala or Almana L'Kohen Gadol. It's a defect for them. It's something which is imperfect about their marriage. They want to have a higher level of Kedusha, a higher level of enjoyment in this world. So for the Kohen, we force that upon the Kohen. We make sure he has that. Beis enforces it. So Mizonos is really a din in the Nisuin. Mizonos, a woman only gets Mizonos after the Nisuin. Now Rusa really doesn't get Mizonos. You get engaged to a woman, she doesn't get Mizonos. Mizonos is a benefit of the Nisuin. So we don't want that Nisuin, and really technically maybe there is no Nisuin in terms of the nafkaminas, which you get, because you could get it to a ksuva from the Erisin. I think we pass there is a ksuva from the Erisin, but the mano masayim, but the Tanai ksuva, which is really based on the Nisuin, the stipulations, they made 6 stipulations in the ksuva. One is the Baal gives mizonos to his wife, and also he has to redeem her. These things if they're both alive, she wouldn't benefit from these because there's basically no marriage. We don't want them to get married. I mean, it's questionable whether it is a marriage. We just force them to get divorced, or there's no concept of marriage over there. So therefore, he doesn't get mazonos. That is the case of Malachon Galushal close to the Kohen Hedyot. What about the case of, and then we talk about a case of Shnios. Shnios is an erva midarabanan. So in that case, she loses the ksuba also, and I guess she would lose the mazonos. She doesn't get anything. She doesn't get anything. That's a knas. The Gemara says either because the rabbanan strich and chizuk, or because she instigated over there. Technically, there's no problem midaraisa to makadesh or to be married to the shnios midaraisa. The rabbanan there is. So therefore, technically, she would be entitled to everything. Just a knas, they removed everything from her. The Gemara then discusses on Pehema Beis, what about Yisrael marries a mamzeres? Now this is an Isser Lav. This is an interesting case, right? It wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah only says Aman l'Kohen Gadol Yisuri Kedusha. The Isser of Yisrael marrying a mamzeres is the same thing as a mamzer marrying a Yisraelis. Is that Ashalova Bakal? It's not a pagam. As you mentioned, two things: there's being part of the Kal Hashem and part of being the Kedusha. The Kedusha is specifically, there's more Kedusha by Kohanim, and that's on the man. The Kal, being part of the Kal Hashem, and part of the congregation, that's always Lo Yavo Mamzer B'Kal Hashem. Yavo is Bia. One of the ways of Kedushin is Bia. Bia we explain differently than Be'ila. Be'ila is more of Nisuin. Bia is more Kedushin. It's for the man. Bia is for both the man and the woman, more so for the woman. That consummates an Nisuin. So when it comes to mamzeres and Yisrael, so that's not an Isser Kedusha, that's an Isser of Kal, being part of the congregation, and doing a Bia, doing something that ruins the congregation. You're ruining the status of the congregation, doing it, you're mixing in a mamzer with a Kal Hashem, with the congregation of Hashem. Mamzer as a pagam, because of his parents had a forbidden union, so therefore don't mix it in, don't do a Kedushin. But the Nisuin, is no problem. There's no problem in Yisuin Yisrael to a mamzer. A mamzer to Yisrael, it's lo yavo. The kedushin's a problem. Technically, it was possible to have Nisuin without kedushin. We'll see. Maybe it's possible to have Nisuin without kedushin. The marriage is a full-fledged marriage, and that's what the Gemara says. There would be a ksuba, according to the first reason. That's the raisa. That the raisa lo srichin chizak. If she instigated, maybe we penalize her and take away the ksuba. But I think the main reason is that we paskin that the main reason is dvar Torah, srichin chizuk, divrei Torah lo srichin chizuk, divrei sofrim srichin chizuk. So the raisa, she could be married to him, and there's no knas or there's no penalization. So therefore, there is a marriage. I don't know if this is the halakha or not, but I have to check on Mesachas Ketubos. But it could be. When a mamzer is married to Yisrael, it's a legitimate marriage, and there would be mazonos. I don't know if we'd force them to get divorced. I'm not really sure if we'd force them to divorce. That the Kidashto tells me you force Isurei Kahuna to get divorced. Isurei Yisrael, Mamzeres, Nesina. I don't know if we get divorced. It's possible to have a contract in Nisuin, and based on the Knai Ksuva, which is a product in Nisuin, would apply, I think, over there. There's one final case I want to talk about. Arayos, where it's a full-fledged arayos, easy to it's kares. So there we know it creates a mamzer. The union creates a mamzer, and also it says lo havaya. There's no havaya, and havaya always means nisuin. So it's clear, I think, that if you're married to an erva midal raisa, which is a chi of kares, at least a chi of kares, certainly misas based in, there would be no havaya, no nisuin, and for sure there'd be no ksuva, and there would not because, even though it's divrei Torah and divrei Torah is stricken chizuk. But it would be even better than grusha v'chalus l'kohen hedyot or aman l'kohen gadol. We forced them to get divorced. It could be there is a contract in Yisuin, and we just forced them to get divorced. So we take away the benefits of marriage. Right? There's no havaya. There's no nisuin. There's not even a shaila. There's no mizonos. There's no payros. There's no anything. Any of the Tanai Ksuva would not apply by arayos and chayav krisos and chayav misas based. And I hope you enjoyed today's share. See you tomorrow.